Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys are getting settled so that you can join in on this wonderful discussion that we're going to be having tonight. I see a few people on Instagram joining in already, so I'm very happy to hear that. We're also streaming live on LinkedIn, so if you are on LinkedIn, please go ahead and check us out on LinkedIn as well. So, good evening. I know you normally see me here like Tuesday through Thursday, but today is a special day. And we're here on a good Monday morning. And a good Monday, and I hope your Monday went well. If you do not know who I am Sabrina Trueblood. I am a certified lactation counselor and lactation program manager at the Aladoon Tree. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this discussion. If this is your first time here, tonight we're going to be discussing fatherhood and feeding and getting some perspectives on the breastfeeding journey from a father's point of view. And admittedly, this conversation it was really born out of my husband checking me. That's really why we're here today. My best friend, Julia, she had a baby at the end of the year, and I was asking her how she was doing, and checking on her and baby. And one day my husband was like, well, how is her husband doing? How's Joe doing? And I was like, I don't know, I'm sure he's fine. He didn't have a baby. I'm sure he's doing well. And Brian was like, but what? But he still just had a baby added to his house. I think you should check on him, or I think I should check on him. And he went ahead and he did check on him, and it was absolutely needed. And it got me to thinking about the journeys that dads also take on this breastfeeding route. A lot of times it's focused on the mother, but not all the time focused on their partners and who are there to support them. So before we get into it, I of course want to thank my guests for joining us tonight. And while I absolutely think I can give a good introduction, I know that it's always great to have that person introduce themselves. So I'm going to kick it off with bringing one of our guests, Brian, on so that he can give a quick introduction. Hello, hello. No, it's like we could hear you before, but I'm unable to hear you now.
Is that better?
Yep.
There we go, because I was muted. Good evening, everyone. And as she shared, my name is Brian Trueblood, Senior. I am elated to be a part of this conversation. And we have one child. You can take a hint from my um, suffixes of senior. So I have a son, and I'm excited to have this conversation. I'm glad that you acknowledge my concern because we go through this process with you all. So there's another perspective that I think not as isn't always considered. So I'm glad you created a space for us to be able to speak and advocate for the men.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to bring Chris on. Chris, if you can give us a little introduction.
Hello, all. My name is Chris Stroman. Currently residing in Tallahassee, Florida, and my wife of a million years. We've got two boys, 1 7, 1 3, and this is an actual conversation that the wife and I have had at some point in time. She was concerned about obviously what was my mental space at the time. So
Mm.
I do think this is a really good conversation. I'm really excited to see what comes from it, and just talking with the fellas, and obviously Sabrina, but getting real good insight in what others have experienced. So yeah,
Awesome. And thank you for being here. Chris and I go way back, like high school way back, like 20-year class reunion is in 3 weeks way
absolutely,
back. So thank you for being here.
absolutely.
Devin, hi, how are you? Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Devin Adams. I have one child. He will be 18 months on July 1st. So excited to be here, with other dads talking about this, really shedding some light on, our mental space, the things that kind of were going on in our heads whenever we brought a child or helped bring a child into this world. So I don't know that anyone, until Sabrina reached out to me, I don't know that anyone asked me, what was it like for you when your wife was breastfeeding? So excited to share and hear other perspectives.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. I'm sorry that nobody asked. I'm a part of the problem, but and I'm being honest, but thank you for being here. I appreciate you. We are going to bring on, last but not least, Myron. Could you give us a
Hello,
little
everyone.
introduction?
Absolutely. My name is Myron Davis. I've been married for 11 years. I have one beautiful daughter. I too am pleased to be here to talk about my experience. I'm one that takes parenting very seriously. I maxed out on my paternity leave and I wanted to make sure that I had a presence. So it is very important for us to discuss our mental and emotional health and the process. So I'm happy to be here.
I am happy you are here also, and I love your daughter because she is my niece. I mean, she's a great girl.
She loves you back.
And I'm her godmother, just putting it out there.
Mhm.
So I know there may be some people who are watching this live that are like, what do these men have to say about breastfeeding? They don't have breasts. What are we even talking about here? And I want us to just take a step back and be open, to listening and learning, because I'm interested to hear your experience. Of course, so Brian and I have one child together. We are not related. I mean, we're husband and wife. We're not brother and sister. I was just trying to get explained the
Dang.
last night. And I don't think I ever asked him. The boy is 8, and I don't think I ever asked him his opinion about this. So we're going to start with you, Brian, and I'm just going to ask, how did you, kind of taking a step back to the beginning of the journey, how did you feel when you learned that your partner first wanted to breastfeed? Did you have any initial thoughts and concern around breastfeeding?
I was excited. Completely biased. I was breastfed. Um, don't remember when it happened, but I know it happened. But I have younger siblings, so I'm aware that my mother breastfed all of us. And my aunts did it. I feel like most of my family did it, so I didn't. It really wasn't another option. So when we were expecting, we had the conversation, and you were open to it. You shared your experiences, or you shared what your mother shared her experiences were, and they weren't the same as mine. So when I saw that you were on board with it, I was like, cool. So my initial going through it or anticipating it, I thought it was gonna be super smooth because I'm like, we both on board. We the two that had to live in this house and raise this child. So I was thinking, it wasn't going to be too much of a challenge or obstacles. But of course, as you continue to live and you have different experiences, you realize like, oh, there's other inputs that way have a little more weight than I was expecting through this process. So, but yeah, initially I was like, cool. It was like a no brainer, especially when you said yes to it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that I was able to go through this. And sometimes you hear from Brian, you hear his parents said, his parents or his mom breastfed it. So it seemed natural, and it didn't seem out of the odd, out of the out of the norm, I guess. And there's a lot of people that have an input and an impact on how you make your decisions. Chris, what was your experience when Marjorie, I know his wife, so I'm dropping names, when Marjorie said that she wanted to breastfeed, and was your reaction different from your first son to your second?
My initial, well, kind of going back, I'm unlike Brian. I don't know if I was breastfed when I was a baby. I wish I knew. I should have asked my mom.
Especially before coming on here.
Yeah, I probably should have asked her. But no, my initial thought, I didn't raise any of my nieces, nephews, or anything like that. And I have one sister and my other brothers, and I didn't really know how they raised their kids. I didn't ask those questions. I don't know, sort of kind of didn't know to ask those questions. Mm-hmm. But going to my experience, I felt like I was going in with a blank slate. Whatever happens, happens. I'm on this new journey. I don't know what to expect other than, Marjorie's a subject matter expert. She raised her nieces and nephews. So that was kind of my introduction into it. And prior to giving birth on the first child, she was taking classes. So she was kind of getting some insight on it. Her mom was always there from the beginning. So she kind of had a leg up in it. But I would pick up things here and there, and I may not have told her about it, but, little things that kind of prepped me for it. And I think that kind of put me at ease that, I know this is going to be difficult, but like I said, it's a new journey, so I don't know what to expect. So we'll just see where it goes. And when you asked about from the first child to the second child, I already knew what to expect at that point. I already knew that she was fully committed to it. And for her, she let me know ahead of time that, hey, I'm going to do this for, 2 years. And, you've already done it with the first child. You're going to do the same thing with the second child. And, hey, I was a lot more hands-on. Got some input from other people. I think the second time I probably did ask more questions. Especially of the nurses in the labor and delivery departments. But
right.
I did ask more questions, a little bit more things. Hey, this happened the first time. Is it the same the second time? So I think that helped out.
Well, shout out to you for trying to get some prep, because I actually have a question about that later on. So hold that thought about what you were saying you were doing for your prep, because like you said, you kind of just go into it blindly. You don't know what to expect. And you're like, well, breastfeeding is natural. And I tell my clients all the time, just because it's natural don't mean it's easy.
Right.
I will say that over and over again, because it can be very difficult. Devin, did you have any prior experience or exposure to breastfeeding before your son was born? And how did you feel when you first learned that Kelsey, I also know his wife, was deciding to breastfeed the baby?
So I was really, really excited that Kelsey decided to breastfeed, just because I know that the benefits, the benefits that come with it, not to mention it's formula is expensive. We had just come out of a shortage. So just like her, I was extremely happy. And I just knew that I wanted to be her advocate throughout the process. Unfortunately, you hear all these statistics about, what women go through, a postpartum, and I wanted to make sure that I was an advocate for her. And I think I was fortunate that I have a background in nursing, so I'm a registered nurse by training. So I knew I wanted to be her advocate, and I was actually a little afraid that I would be too annoying or too, all up in her business. But like, I wanted to be involved, from the beginning. But admittedly, I didn't have much knowledge on like how does the process get started, what does it entail? I just knew that it was going to be good for my child and for my wife. So I did have to kind of get some of that background information. But for me, I wanted to be there every step of the way, particularly in the beginning. And honestly, maybe other men feel this way as well. But at least in the beginning, I was jealous. It's like, look at this. Look at you. You are sustaining our child. You are providing what he needs. Like, I can't do that. Like, so, that made me feel, at least initially, some type of way. It's like, I wish I had, a way to get this type of bonding with my son. So, like, some of those thoughts crossed my mind, just thinking of how can I make sure to get a bond as well? Because naturally, my wife was able to get it through breastfeeding. So those were just kind of some of my initial thoughts, kind of when the process, first took off.
Wow. First of all, thank you for being honest and vulnerable, right? A lot of people wouldn't say that, because at first I was thinking you were saying, oh, you were jealous because you didn't get the same amount of time, but that you just blew my mind, because that's a whole different type of thought process. It's like, man, I wish I can, I guess do the same that my wife can do in this particular, instance. And that's really interesting that you said that, because I also have a question later on about bonding, because that is a fear that a lot of people have, not being able to bond with their child. And even some moms who do breastfeed, they have a tough time getting that bonding with their child, even though they have that physical connection to them. So thank you for giving us that information. Myron, what about you? What was your first thought when Cassandra decided that, hey, I want to breastfeed our child? Did you have any concerns regarding that, or exposure to breastfeeding prior to that?
No, I didn't have any personal exposure to breastfeeding, but I was elated that she desired to breastfeed. It was a desire that I would have. I've always had for my child. I'm not afraid to say that I find breastfeeding to be a spiritual or majestic experience between a mother and a child, having that innate ability to feed the child in and of yourself, and understanding that that is just really a continuation of the process, right? Because the feeding has always taken place through the mother in some form of fashion. So it was something that I always desired. In terms of being prepared, we took a few classes in terms of the benefits of breastfeeding, but I would say that was the extent of my experience. And I also knew that it was something that was encouraged by my parents.
Mm. Well, you better tell us, Dr. Davis. You better tell us about the spiritual connection, because it absolutely is. You have such a bond, like just the time. Even though as time goes on and your breastfeeding journey lengthens, sometimes it feels like, oh, this is so much, and it can be overwhelming. But it really is such a great bonding time with your child that you can't have, because you literally are sustaining your child. You're
Right.
giving them life force. And I know everybody doesn't have the chance to breastfeed, and some of it is physical, some of it is emotional, some of it is mental, some of it you don't have the support system around you. So it's always a blessing when you're able to do that. And I know every family here that's representing here has a different story to tell. Some people have had a more complicated postpartum journey than others, and it can be a very risky factor, especially for Black women in America. But I want to start this question with Myron, and then we can go ahead to Chris, and then we can pop over to the other two guests. In what way did you feel that you were able to support your partner during their breastfeeding journey immediately after giving birth? And did you have any hiccups that you had to navigate?
Wow. We had considerable hiccups. Actually, my wife and I obviously wanted to breastfeed from the very beginning, but something very peculiar happened while my wife was pregnant. The pregnancy auto-corrected, if you will, her blood pressure, and she was fine. She didn't have to take the medications, so forth and so on. Upon the birth of the child, her blood pressure shifted. And so we were in the clear. We went home. We got approved that the baby passed all her tests. And once we went home, we realized my wife had to go back to the hospital. Unfortunately, once the child leaves the hospital, the mother cannot return with the child to the hospital in that unit with the newborns. So, unfortunately for me, I was with child. We had a breastfeeding plan, and I learned that it may not be as quite the experience that we desire with breastfeeding, but breast milk was still
Hmm.
attainable. And Sabrina was instrumental in that process. I don't know if we should go into detail now in that process, but I'm very thankful for you and everything that you did for us.
Well, you're welcome. Because one thing I'm gonna do is pick up a phone. Okay, I'm gonna pick up a phone and call whoever I need to call to get my people taken care of. I don't care if
Yes.
we don't have to be in the same states. I'm gonna call and tell somebody to use the left side of their brain and the right side.
And you surely
Um,
did that. And so
um,
I just want to say that, we were encouraged to pump and dump while we were going through this period. And Sabrina was on the phones challenging doctors, nurses, and everyone else for their medical opinion. And we found that we did not indeed have to dump that milk. So it became a journey of me traveling to and from the hospital to bring breast milk back. So I felt like I had this treasure that I was bringing back to my child to make sure that she had what we desired from the beginning.
and what did that the I know the question was about supporting your partner, but what was that experience for you with a newborn? Your first, not just like this is your first baby. This is your good baby. Like
Right.
you this baby just came out, and you are not only worrying about taking care of your child, but your wife who is in the hospital. What was that experience for you?
Well, it was a very stressful experience. You can imagine me having a child days old. As much as I paid attention in the classes, I didn't think that I would be in that role of being number one. So it was not something that I expected or anticipated. Um, it was stressful to say the least, but also uh, thinking about my wife. She's in the hospital for a reason,
Hmm.
and from what I understood, could have been life threatening.
Yeah.
And so, you have to juggle that along with the newborn. And a lot of prayers were said and a lot of family support. As I mentioned, BB, along with my sister and other family members, stepped up. In all honesty, we were not really prepared with a lot of bottles because of the breastfeeding process, right?
Mm.
So we did have a few. It was not something that was really on our baby shower list, but we realized that we had to have those bottles in the beginning. So it gave me a little perspective to be prepared for the unexpected.
And I'm glad that you guys made that through, and I'm glad that you had staff to be able to support you, even if they had to get pushed. They still were able to support you and give you guys what you need. Chris, what about you? In what ways did they vary between the first pregnancy and your second pregnancy? Do you remember immediately supporting your partner after giving birth? And if it's just like kind of like, well, no, I was going crazy. I was in it too, and I couldn't figure it out. That's a good answer. That's an answer as well.
No, I think I think prior to giving birth, we had a legitimate conversation between us of either breastfeeding or doing formula, and I didn't, like I said before, I didn't know anything. I don't know which is better for the child anyway. So hey, whatever you want to do, I'm good with it. But I mean, she was adamant about breastfeeding, and she was telling me a lot of things that I'd never known about it. She did her homework. She looked at every book, watched every YouTube video that she could, and talked to any and everybody. And I realized that you can know everything about a subject until the day it comes,
Mm,
and you start like all that stuff just vanishes out the window, and you're
right.
like, oh, wait, what am I supposed to do? And I think when my first son was born, when he was in the hospital, um, she was initially having some issues with latching, and I guess that's a common thing because the nurse or there was a specific nurse that came in there, and that was essentially her job. My job is to come in here and make sure you latch with that baby,
Mm.
and I promise you, it helped that she looked like us.
Yes.
And
Yes,
that
sir.
that made both of us feel that much more comfortable about it. But um, Marjorie, she, like I said, she had her plan in her mind, and it turned out to be a lot more painful than she
Mm,
initially was anticipating. And in my mind, if it's painful, there may be another way about doing this. And so she just wanted to fight through it. She wanted to push through because breastfeeding that's the goal. I'm trying
mhm,
to make sure I give my baby as much nutrients as I can, because that in essence, the way she made me feel like that was her job. Her
mm,
job,
mhm,
whatever she does to make money, that's another job. But this is my purpose filled job.
mhm.
And because she made me feel that way, I essentially took it upon myself to, make sure because this is painful for her. I need to figure this out. She's thinking about it, but she can't get past the pain. So I need to I need to talk to the nurses. I need to figure out what is another way to get this done. And I think we finally had a breakthrough the day before casing my first son, the day before taking him home. And months later, she told me, she was like, that was probably the turn, because she was about to give
Mhm.
up. And she was like, boy, I'm glad you figured it out.
Yeah.
She was like, I'm glad you figured it out. I knew I wanted to breastfeed, but if I'm doing this for 2 years, this is not the goal.
Right, that pain is not the goal. Not
Yeah.
for 2 years.
Oh yeah. But with the second child, it was a lot easier for him to latch on, because she already knew, if it's not working one way, I know another way to make this happen.
Mhm.
I know this should happen, and I know how it should feel.
Right.
And having that bond with both kids, from the beginning, I didn't understand what colostrum was, but like Myron was saying, that's liquid gold right there.
Yeah.
Man, that's the ticket. And I I learned that from right there. That's essentially building compound interest. If you
Right.
get that colostrum in there from the beginning, along the way, you're just improving the lifespan of my child.
And you know
So
what? Something you said, it's like I always tell people, colostrum is milk. And a lot of people always have, and this is a common misconception, and that's why lactation professionals are here. A lot of people are like, my milk didn't come in yet, right? And I'm sure Devin, as a nurse, you probably heard that, in the hospital, some of my milk hasn't come in yet. And your milk is there. Milk is created in the third trimester. It's just a thicker consistency, like it's chock full of nutrients. It's a thicker consistency, and then it transitions into what we call mature milk, where it's a thinner consistency, and that's the milk that people think is the only milk. But in fact, colostrum is milk, and your body's been doing what it needed to do from the second trimester. So I'm happy to hear that. Um, Devin, what was your experience what type of support did you feel that you were able to provide your wife in her direct, postpartum journey after she gave birth in regards to breastfeeding?
Sure. I think for me, just being there to provide encouragement, because in the beginning, we had some difficulties with latch and,
Mm-hmm.
production, and we had some initial visits with not Sabrina, with another like consultant as part of our insurance. We did multiple visits just to kind of get the process started, and I tried to be there just to encourage my wife. I knew that eventually we would we would get it. Colby would be able to latch on.
Mm-hmm.
The production would, milk would start flowing. So for me, it was just being there to provide that encouragement. But it is difficult because when you see, I guess like our son, when babies are born and they lose the weight initially, and then
Mm-hmm.
just our son was born, he was 6 pounds and some change, so not the biggest, not the biggest baby. Then he lost weight, and just all these thoughts start to come in your head, like, oh, we have to make sure to feed him so he grows, and just thinking about how I could just always be there to provide a positivity throughout the process, because I saw how difficult it was, and I can only imagine being a woman who's trying to breastfeed and it's not working the way that you want. That's a whole lot of mental, emotional things that I could never really know what you're feeling, but just kind of being there to provide the support. Because it was, like I said, it was tough in the beginning. We had to start out
Mhm.
with the little nipple shield, the little piece of
Mhm.
plastic, and then, when we would get a couple of drops, okay, that's better than the last time. Or like, oh,
Right.
he was on for, last time he was only on for 30 seconds. Now it's a minute. So like, just trying to find little little improvements to just provide that
Mhm.
encouragement. Because just showing how appreciative I think showing your partner how appreciative you are for them undertaking such a like heroic, time consuming physical experience is
Mhm.
just, you can't really discount how important that is as a partner to be there to provide that encouragement and just being there. So I think that's the kind of role that I wanted to play, knowing that I can't breastfeed, but what I can do, I can be there to be the hype man from my wife, so that um, she could be in a good space, which would ultimately help our son. So
And I just want to let you know that you absolutely were, because in all of my consults, I say, do you have a supportive partner? I need to know what I'm up against when I'm working with a client, right? So it was immediately like, yes, no, Devin, yep, he's supportive and he's helping, he's involved. So it was like, it wasn't a case of like, he's nowhere to be found, there's no encouragement. So I want to let you know, sir, that you did your goal, you did your job, and you met your goal.
okay, good to
Brian,
know.
about you, in what ways did you feel you supported your partner directly in their postpartum journey after giving birth in regards to breastfeeding?
Um, so going to the hospital, like I said earlier, I was like, man, this is gonna be good. Like pro breastfeeding, and I'm under the assumption that this is gonna be real smooth, easy. See my mom, my aunts, everybody doing it. So little fella gets here, and you're trying to have him latch, and that was like when I realized, like, going into it, I thought my supportive role was going to be, hey, whatever you need me to do, I got it, because this part we ain't gonna be worried about. Like, you've been
Hmm.
locked in, committed. My mom's been like the advocate. You've been talking to her, so I thought we got all of the questions answered and everything. And then we had that challenge, and that was the first time when I realized it's like everybody in this building is not pro breastfeeding, and so
You better say it.
that's when I got kind of taken back. I said, "Whoa!" Like, they offered the formula real quick, and so I started to get on defensive guard, because I felt like, hey, you're trying to take this experience away from you, and I knew
Hmm.
that that was a very vulnerable moment. And so when I started seeing that, you started kind of getting pressures like, oh, the babies, kind of like what Devin mentioned. It wasn't the weight thing, but I think it was, they pinched his skin. It's like, oh, well, he looked like he might be a little dehydrated, so they're kind of giving us all these other angles to like pushing us to do the formula. And I was like, shoot, I wasn't prepared to like have to battle them. I thought they was
Hmm.
gonna be on board. Like, we tell them what our plan is, and they're like, all right, you want plan A? We're gonna go and we got a script for this. But it was, at least from my vantage point, it just felt like it was like, oh, it didn't work the first time. All right, get rid of that. Here's an option. We know this is gonna work. So yeah, that first night was just tough, because I'm trying to like still be present and supportive and encouraging for you, but I can see like it was challenges of him not either latching on, or if it wasn't comfortable, and that part was stressful. But like Chris mentioned, we had the lactation specialist come in. I think it was the next night, and she
Mm-hmm.
told you all these different poses, and I'm like, oh, football pose and all this. I was like, oh, I was like, I didn't think to ask my mom about all these other positions, and then he latched. Um, but then it still wasn't consistent. Like he found one that worked, and then next time it didn't. And then they came in, they asked, did he use the bathroom or what have you, checking his diapers. And I think he didn't wet the diaper or whatever time frame. It was like he has to have the formula. And I remember you looking at me,
Mm-hmm.
and like all the other brothers on here, like I just was like, like I knew selfishly what I wanted, but I saw like the frustration and the pain, at least what I perceived to be pain from you, of like they keep telling me I got to do this, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, look, you know what we want to do, but I want you to feel comfortable because this is our first go at it. Like we know we're gonna make some mistakes, but I don't want us to mess up this early. Like we are
Uh-huh.
dating, and so gave into it, gave him the formula, and I still kind of even now to this day, I don't know if it was something that maybe I showed non-verbally, but you broke down, and I was like, shoot, like I know we didn't want to do that, but I didn't want to say, hey, no, you got to deal with this because I'm not going through all those emotions that you were going through, and I remember that moment, and it didn't sit right, and so I was kind of like what Chris mentioned. After that, I was like, screw it, I'm gonna be ready for every negative opportunity that may present
Mm.
itself because I'm gonna know how to combat that. And yeah, it prepped me for a few days later. I don't know if we're gonna get to that story when we got home and we thought we were gonna get a little more support. But like that was my tipping point. That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, like I didn't do enough scouting for the opposition. I thought everybody was gonna be on board, and I was after that. I was equipped. I had every tool in the toolbox ready. So if I need to go to this, I'm gonna go to that. So that was it. And so once we got home, I had I had the whole armor ready. Like whoever coming for it, we got to answer for it. And if I seen you feeling vulnerable, which there were moments where it happened, I was willing to go to bat, and you know the relationship would have been a little ruffled for a moment. But I was like, you gotta love us. Like you ain't gotta like me right now, but I ain't trying to be your friend. So I was comfortable having those tough conversations because I saw what you experienced at the hospital, and to have to come home and have to deal with not having people on board 100% just wasn't an option. So like that's what I felt like. I was like, look, I got your back. You will never have to feel like I wasn't prepared to protect you, and that was
Mm.
what I took as a challenge, and I felt very comfortable and confident doing that and advocating for you because I felt like you just was in a vulnerable position, and then people would try to make you feel bad because of their own take on it, and I just wasn't going to allow that to happen while I knew there was something that I could do. So that experience at the hospital helped me know how to better prepare to support you, to be honest. Because I thought it was just going to be like, all right, well, you need me to go get this. All right, I got you. Are you tired? All right, because all my other experiences, I've seen my mom just my siblings come over, or she go get them and breastfeed them. Latching wasn't an issue, at least
Right,
from
just
my
pop them
vantage
on
point.
and gone.
Right, at least from my vantage point. By the time I probably saw it, like she had went through those, bumps and bruises. But yeah, I just was caught off guard at the hospital. But I just vowed not to let that happen again. So
So two things. You challenge accepted, challenge met, because you absolutely were my my defender from there on out, right? And it's kind of sad that the experience in hospitals, and like I said earlier, everybody is not always able to breastfeed, right? But it's kind of sad that the experience in hospitals is absolutely formula forward. Right? They leave you with little samples.
yeah,
You can clearly tell them, hey, I want to breastfeed, I want to do this, and they'll leave you with little samples. That woman at Howard County General who gave my child formula when I did not want him to get formula, well, she will never be okay in my book. Like, never, never, never. And she didn't even let me feed him. She was the first person to do it because she said, I know what I'm doing. I feed babies, I feed newborns all the time. And if I wasn't newly postpartum, I'm gonna keep the next words to myself, but I'm just gonna say I didn't appreciate that, and I will never ever ever forgive that woman. Um, and it is very hard, and a lot of the times, as a mother, we just want our partner to protect us, defend us, no matter if it's against your mother who's not supportive, your father who's not supportive, grandma who said nobody breastfed in my family, so y'all ain't gonna be able to breastfeed. It doesn't matter who it is. From my perspective, and I'm sure all the women who are in your lives, we are appreciative of the defense, because we're, like you said, like everybody said, I think almost all of you guys said vulnerable. Like it is a very, very vulnerable time. So having the person who we are walking this life with be our protectors is invaluable. And so from our point of view, right, the emotional load of not just breastfeeding but postpartum is essentially a downhill roller coaster, right? Like we're hoping our hormones are going to regulate in this lifetime so that we are not, all over the place and bouncing around like that. And I never asked how it impacts a partner. So I know we've discussed on how you guys have been there and supportive and what that support meant for you. And I know Myron touched on it a bit about, what the impact was when his wife had to go back into the hospital and he had to take care of a newborn. Chris, were there any challenges that you faced in Marjorie's breastfeeding journey, and how did you handle that emotionally? I know we don't talk about men and emotions all the time, and we absolutely should, because you guys are humans and I'm confused on why we don't. But emotionally, what was the impact of the breastfeeding journey for you?
For me, I would say the overarching thing is I didn't have anybody to go to. I didn't have another male to talk to about this journey, and I didn't have anybody to kind of reflect on, or just kind of keep me looking at the big picture. You kind of get stuck looking at the day to day. What do you need today? What does the baby need today? But then you forget, over this week that this baby's gone from 6 pounds to 6.5, and you forget the baby gained an inch, and you kind of miss the little changes that are happening. You see it over time, obviously, but you're so stuck and focused on what needs to happen right now. A lot of like our day to day as far as breastfeeding tended to go to storing milk, and I mean we would have like you'll see memes of people with cash on the bed. We had like milk pouches on the bed, and I was like, oh, we're making it. We're big right now. But no, like it became of something that was really important. And like I said at the beginning, I wish I had somebody to kind of talk about this journey with at the time. Just kind of help guide me in how I could maybe make Marjorie's experience a little bit better. I mean, my experience was what I know. That's whatever I'm living at the time. That's my experience. But hey, I mean, how did it feel for you when Marjorie was upset with you about, or not Marjorie, but your wife was upset with you about, you forgot to bathe the kid at whenever she was tired and this and that. And I mean, I don't know. I think that's what I wish I would have had during the journey. I wish I would have had that other person, or maybe group of guys that would kind of a support system, essentially. I'm being my wife's rock, but like you said, mental health, you need your own support system as well.
Oh, you guys. Brian, what was your thought process? How was your emotional state impacted with my breastfeeding journey? And what were the challenges that you faced, and how were you able to cope with them?
I don't know how much I can share for the second challenge. I know I shared the first challenge. Do I get a pass to share the next challenge?
Yes.
Okay.
But don't put no. Yes. Go ahead.
You know what the second challenge was when we got home. Okay. All right. So the biggest challenge was my lovely mother-in-law. Um,
Y'all, he
I
talking
love it
about
to
my
this day.
mama, y'all.
Yeah. But that nurse had already like struck a nerve. So I want to say, and again, my mother-in-law is a nurse. So she came in with, her practice and her ideology, and she didn't breastfeed. So she felt like it was going to be very hard because she didn't do it. So her daughters weren't going to be able to do it. And we were the first grandchild. So,
To
like,
breastfeed.
yeah, to breastfeed. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
So, like, there was just days where she wasn't seeing the growth that she wanted, and she just really was daggering Sabrina. And that was the day that I told Sabrina, I was like, look, she gonna have to go. Like, because she's like already kind of threatened, like, well, I can leave. And I was like, I'm about to go tell her, like, Ma, I love you, but if you gotta leave, you're gonna have to leave because that energy ain't helping. And
Hmm.
it was the first time that I had to have more of like that stern conversation with her, and we have a great relationship and we can talk about a lot of things. But that was that moment. But I was ready. Like I told Sabrina, I was like, look, she cannot like me for however long. Like, I don't care. We're still gonna show up, and if she want to hold that grudge, she's gonna have to hold it as long as she wants. But I was willing to do that, and that was like the toughest challenge that I had. But after doing that, and she kind of didn't speak to me for maybe the next day, and then she kind of saw that we weren't gonna move on it, and then she just kind of got on board. And after that, oh my, like, you made the rest of the journey just so much more peaceful and joyful because I don't know if you felt like, all right, that was the last hurdle that you had to get over. But then I just saw you. I think I told you all the time, like, you just became a superhero then. Because anybody said anything, I think it was like, look, if I can stand up to my mom, you can stand up to anybody. I think that
Right.
was the mantra that you took. And so after that, it was just like, you need me? And you was like, no, I got this. So I was like, all right, bet. So what you need me to go do? And it just, from there, it just made the rest of the process so much smoother. And, you know, like, people tease us, but really more so you. Like, oh, you still breastfeeding that boy? He's 3, he's 4, he's 5, whatever. And I was like, hey, he look fine, don't he? Right? And
Right.
leave him
Hush up.
alone. And well, he's on the playground. It's like, yeah, he does, but he fine. Ain't nothing wrong with it. So, like, you gave me more just peace and joy from, like, I saw that you were good. So after that, all I had to do, like one of the brothers said earlier, I just had to be the hype man. Then I was like, yep, and what? I'm in the back, like, who gonna try it? Because best believe, if she looked back here, I'm stepping up. And so, like, after that, the rest of the process was smooth because, again, uh, man, I can have chills now because it just made me feel like, yes, you're doing what you wanted to do. And it also took me back to, like, when I saw my mother breastfeeding my siblings, right? My mom was very comfortable, very similar to how you, like, we out in the public and you was like, all right, yep, pop it out and you breastfeed and people looking, I'm just waiting like, ooh, I hope somebody
Waiting.
say something because I know you ready. But if you don't, I'm like, yo, you got a problem. So, like, that part just was, it was empowering. So, like you said, the emotion I had was just like joy and peace because,
Mm.
like, I knew we was on the same path, we was on the same journey, and we both was like willing to go to the war for that because it was a decision that we made, right? And we were going to hold true to it as long as we wanted to. So that part, it was just, yeah. After that second hurdle, I think you looked and you was like, "Are we good?" And he's like, "Yeah, we good." And the rest of it was just, it was good.
And I want to say, like, and this could be my experience, this might be you guys' experience as well, but becoming a parent was the catalyst to helping me enforce boundaries. Like, after having a child, you are well, for me, I am suddenly a-okay with establishing boundaries. I am very much okay with saying
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. And for the people who are listening in or watching in, I don't know if you know, but just to kind of digress a bit, what Brian said, the experience I had with my wonderful mother, who just didn't have the knowledge and didn't have that support because she didn't have that support, that was a catalyst to becoming a lactation counselor because, as mentioned, she had been a nurse longer than I've been alive. So how am I supposed to fight with a medical professional as an engineer at the time? It was like she literally called me Dr. Google. It was like she was like, "You don't know what you're doing," and I said, "I got something for you." And I, within the year of my son being born, I went and got certified, because you can only say so many things to me so many times before I'm like, oh, you don't believe me? I'm going to find somebody else who believes me, or, get that information and you're going to believe me now. So yes, it was a very big catalyst, and it's essentially like understanding that as a parent, you're going to have boundaries or rules or approaches that other people don't agree with. And that's fine, because guess what? It's your child. You're raising your child. Devin, what was your experience emotionally right after Kelsey gave birth? Did you have any? What was your? I know you had the challenges, and you went and you saw a lactation consultant or a lactation professional, repeatedly to get the latch right, to get this, to get the journey going. What was your emotional state during that time?
Just kind of reflecting back on it, like it just you don't realize until like afterwards and like reflect like how taxing it was on you, and just thinking about how much better it could have been, had I tuned into a discussion, like this beforehand. And I can think just like, I read over some general parenting books, just trying to see what was going to be in store. And never once saw the dad perspective around like, breastfeeding. And I think, for me, it's just, I'm sure other men with their partners just thinking about sometimes like there's nothing you can do more, like some things are just out of your control, and just being, especially taxing when things are out of control with people that you love, that you can't you can't do anything
Right.
more to kind of remedy the situation. And I guess also emotionally, just kind of thinking or just realizing that the world isn't really set up best for breastfeeding women to succeed.
Mm.
I think back to whenever my wife was nursing and also pumping, and she returned to work, and just thinking about logistically, like, so how are we going to do this? Just hearing from her, like her challenges and not being able to do anything. Like for instance, like finding the lactation room at the airport and making sure that it's open. And if it's not open, who do you need to call so that it
Right.
is open so that you can pump before your 3 hour flight, and also just like, okay, you're away from me now, you're pumping, like we still need the milk. How's it going to get back to us? Well, who knew that FedEx could ship your milk overnight
Yep.
in a box for a large fee?
All right.
It's just like, um, you know, it just, I don't know, it opened my eyes to think, and forgive me for saying this, but I think that, you know, if the world were kind of set up differently, I think that more women could probably have better success. More women who want to breastfeed their child could have success more often if some things with how this world is set up changed. But it all just goes back to me thinking about and being okay with knowing that I did everything that I could do to try to, set my wife up to succeed, to be able to nurse or to pump. So those are just kind of my thoughts.
Well, you said a word, because absolutely, if the world was set up to support women overall, we would have better best breastfeeding outcomes, right? Like you said, you're going to, okay, you have to go to the airport. Does your airport even have a lac pod? Does your airport have a lac pod that's clean? Did somebody use it for something else and it's no longer sanitary? There's so many things around. Like, yes, if it's locked, how am I supposed to get into it? I have a 6-week maternity leave. How am I supposed to get into a rhythm? I have no maternity leave, or I have no lactation policy. When I was working with Kelsey, with your wife, she was calling me initially, or she was reaching out to me initially because she was going back, and she had to go back to work after her parental leave was up, and she was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, and she was virtual, and she still was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, and I'm like, yeah, because it's still hard, because although you're not in the building, you still have to navigate around all these things, and the sound of a pump is like, ooh, ooh, it's like suction, like you can hear that if you're on the call. You can't just be like, oh, I'm gonna be, without anything. Somebody's gonna be like, can you mute yourself? There's something going on in the background. So it absolutely, I agree, Devin. If the world was set up, low key for men, but if the world was set up to support women, then there would be more women who can successfully breastfeed. And I'm actually going right back to you, Devin, with my next question, because and it's kind of funny, because you mentioned this earlier, where you were saying, you wanted to bond with your child and you were worried about that experience. And I know a lot of times, and this is no shot to anybody on the call who may have done this, but a lot of times there's a pressure for mom to pump so dad can feed the baby, right? And while I can never understand the dad's perspective on that, I can say that it can be very nerve wracking for the mom who may not be able to pump well, right? Like in my instance, there was a request from my mom at one point, because she didn't believe that I was producing milk, for me to pump in front of her. And I was like, well, I'm scared, and okay, she my mama, so I'm gonna do it. And it was like 2 ounces or like an ounce, and she was like, you see, that baby's not gaining weight, that baby's not this, that baby's not that. Literally that day I took my child to the ER just to make sure that they were okay, because I was so overwhelmed and I was so scared, right? But that requirement of other family members for a mom to pump after giving birth, when that's not her plan, can be really overwhelming. So Devin, how did you find other ways to bond with your child that didn't involve food?
I think one of the things, particularly in the beginning, I knew that, once we kind of got in the rhythm, my wife got in the rhythm of nursing, very often in the beginning, like that every 2 hours and stretching it out. Like I feel like I was always there to, oh, you finished, hand them over. I tried to, remain, respectful and, but just letting her know that I'm right here.
Mm,
You just finished nursing. I imagine, that that's a taxing to you and your body. I'm here to relieve you should
mm,
you need it. So I just, to me, I think it all boils down to you and your partner kind of getting in a rhythm. And I'll go out and say you need to do what she wants because she you can't discount the traditional saying mama knows best, like especially with your child that she just birthed. I just think just having that open communication with your partner about how you could best be supportive, having them early and often,
mm,
um, could definitely, help the relationship between the parents and the bonding, because I think, you really can't discount, someone being in a good emotional state. I think it's really helpful if your partner's in
mm,
a good emotional state to help things along. But I do know that once we started pumping, that I was really excited to get in there and be able to bottle feed. It was, and then I kind of assumed the role of like, oh, you finished pumping? Give me the bottles, put them in the refrigerator. Oh, we need
mm-hmm.
to freeze some bags. We need to get the bags ready. And then like once Kobe started daycare, like remembering, oh, the night before, I need to go downstairs, take some out the thaw so it can be ready in the
Yeah.
morning. So you kind of, you'll get into a rhythm. And even though it's not direct, with me and my son, I knew that me being involved in the process, finding ways to be involved, even though I couldn't, nurse him. But like,
Right.
there's always a way you can be involved to feel a part of the process. So I think once I
Absolutely.
found that, those initial feelings of like, oh, I wish I could do it, but like, I found kind of my lane, and I think you can work with your partner to find your lane to whatever extent you need, whatever you need to do to feel involved in the process.
Absolutely. Like being there every single time. You're able to bond with your child. And it's really interesting to hear. I'm gonna ask Myron the same question. What I know you had a different experience because you had baby girl in the house when, the wife had to stay at the hospital. So you had to, she had to pump and you had to bottle feed, and that was a way to bond with her. But when your wife did come home and she was latching and you didn't, and the bottles went away, because I distinctly remember the initial conversation with my sister. She was saying, well, I'm only going to latch for like 4 months and I'm going to pump after that, and it'll be fine. And I was like, are you sure? You might be tired of washing bottles, but you check in with me in a few months. At 4 months, she was like, I'm not picking up another bottle. I'm not washing another thing. I'm not doing none of this. I'm just going to latch her. And that's what I'm going to do. So when she came home and she was mainly latching and nursing and not pumping, what were the ways that you were able to bond with your child?
Sure, we had opportunities to bond with play. A lot of people don't know I play too much. And I also enjoy singing to her. So we had opportunities to bond in other ways. So it was a beautiful experience for me. As I mentioned, I took my paternity leave to the max. Luckily, I had been with the organization for quite some time. I had 90 days. So, I had 3 months of bonding and experience and support for my wife. It's a beautiful thing to be desired. Every parent wants to be desired by their child, and it's easy to see the child desiring mommy for uh,
Mm-hmm.
breast milk. And but everything that I could, I had opportunity to play with my daughter, and I enjoyed all those moments. So that was my bonding with her, to let her know that we would have fun and we would sing and fly through the house. So that was my way of bonding with her and having the experience that I desired.
Till this day.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
Till this day.
He calls me daddy friend. So,
Right.
uh, but we have that bond, and I'm happy to be her friend in the right way with I believe the perfect amount of balance.
And I want to say, as you should have taken your paternity leave. There's so many of us who leave our leave on the table. I know I saw an article the other day that it said essentially the percentage of people who didn't take their leave was mainly men, or they didn't take their full leave. Let's say they had 8 weeks, they took one. Let's say they had 12 months. I mean, let's say they had 4 months, they took 3 weeks. They just felt like they didn't need the leave, or they were going to be looked down upon by their counterparts for them taking the leave. But they also had a whole baby brought into their home. They're also those sleepless nights. So congratulations, and I'm proud of you for taking that leave, because you earned it and you needed it, and your family needed it.
Thank you.
Chris, what was the ways that you found where you could bond with the boys that didn't involve, feeding or having to have your wife pump milk?
For me, um, well, initially it was skin to skin as much as I could. Starting from the hospital, they told me that this is one of the best, easiest ways that you can bond with them, and it was true. Just kind of whenever he wasn't doing his own therapy things, but whenever Marjorie didn't have him, that's essentially what I was doing, just sitting on the couch at the hospital doing skin to skin. And I have this running joke with a lot of people that know me that anybody else's child under 6 months, I'm not gonna touch them. It's that's just my thing. I feel like I'm gonna break a child or something. I don't know, but this is
You
my
and my father-in-law, just low key.
oh. this is this is my child. This is my responsibility, and I mean, I took ownership of it. And for me, from day one to I just kind of felt it was important for me to hold my child as much as possible. I always had that running joke. So when it's my turn to step up to the plate, I gotta knock it out.
Right.
And I felt I did that for both kids. Um, my job for my first son, we actually through the city, I worked for the city, and for whatever reason, that was the month or year that they decided to give us essentially a whole month's worth of paternity leave. Before it was you had to use your own sick leave. So
Mm.
I lucked up and I was able to be part of that first group that I was able to get a whole month off. So that was a blessing from the city
Hmm.
for
Right.
and used the same privilege for my second son. Um, the people on my job that they weren't able to take advantage of it, that was one of the first things that,
Mm.
when I did talk to them about that, that was one of the first things they did tell me. They were like, "Man, look, I wish I did have that. I wish I did have that time away from having to think about going to work and just being able to either be there for my wife or be there for my son or daughter, whatever it is." And I was very thankful for it. Um, as far as outside of feeding, just sitting on the couch. If we're gonna watch TV, we're watching something. We're watching something
Together.
educational. We're watching something that is, um, if it's got a song, you better believe I'm humming along with you. If it's got ABCs, you better believe we're talking about ABCs. I'm giving you eye contact, and we're trying to build some type of play. I mean, you're not. He wasn't interacting with me, but hey, in my mind, we had a thing going. So, so I mean, we were a duet, and I mean, if you ask Marjorie right now, for whatever reason, I just happen to be a really good parent for them when it comes to playing, and I attribute it to from when they were born. You play with them, you interact with them. For whatever reason, they come back to it, and Dad, I want to go play. Dad's my guy. So
Right.
hey, I love
Yeah.
it.
And we appreciate that. I just want to let you know because
Oh
in this household,
yeah,
that
absolutely.
is the play as well. It's like, okay, you want to do this, go play. You want to do that, it can literally be anything. And of course, I'll play with him. But like, Dad is his fun person.
Yeah,
So it's so great that you guys have begun that bond. Even when they were itty bitty and probably looking at you like, my eyes can't even focus, sir.
yeah,
I don't even know what you look like right now,
yeah.
but I'm still gonna play with you. Brian, I know that your wife was not planning on pumping, so feeding your child with the bottle wasn't an option. So how did you? What was your approach to bonding with your child during the breastfeeding period?
I know you, I see y'all see how she tried to 8 mile me on that because I was definitely going there. Yeah, so just being honest, maybe the first 3 months was hard emotionally for that because I don't know how else to put it, and probably gonna sound bad. I was jealous that I didn't. He never looked for me for something, right?
Mm,
In the first 3 months, they eat, sleep, pee, poop.
right.
So like when he's waking up, he's paying attention, and then if he wants to eat, he ain't looking for me, reaches for me. So like, it took it took me a while to like understand. It's like, okay, like I was doing the skin to skin, like Chris said. Like when they said that, and that was the one thing that I took and ran with from the hospital. I was like, oh yeah, we doing that. So she always gets on me because I don't take pictures. But if we would have took pictures them first 6, 8, maybe a year, I ain't have no shirt on. It was just him and I. And I mean, it was. So I had to accept like that was it. But yeah, like I was one of the fathers that was like, you keep saying you tired. Can you just pump and then let me feed him? Because I wanted that too, and then I just had to reflect and be like, look, that's not your role, right?
Mm,
But yeah, I was, as Sabrina attached to it, I was the dad that was like, as soon as he fell asleep, all right, come on, let me get him. You're gonna sleep on me, like
you
I
and
was.
Devin.
Yeah, I was like, I want to feel his heartbeat, right? I want to feel him breathing, right? And yeah, I was the guy that I'm talking to him, I'm reading to him, and I mean when I'm talking to him, I'm having the conversation that we're having now. Just because I read books that were like, don't do the baby talk and all that. So like I'm speaking to him now, and yeah, if anybody sees us now, like y'all said, that's my youngest best friend, and like we have some of the most amazing conversations to this day. And I do believe, like what Chris said, I believe it was because of the conversations that we had then. So I'm talking to him about when I do my reflection of the day, and I reflect with him. It's like, man, it was a rough day, and this, and he's not responding, or at least if he is, I'm not able to physically tell. But being able to open up and vent to him about like, "Ooh, man, I'm tired. Really trying to get your mom to help me, let me feed you," like stuff like that. And so, like that was my guy corner right there, and that was what got me through it, like the skin to skin. And then as he got a little bit older, especially like sitting up, then oh yeah, we ripping running through the house. All those pictures that we see on social media with the dad doing the Lion King and flying. Oh, we in there now. So when I had that, and I could start getting responses like laughs and giggles, and he want more of that, I said, say less. Right? I'm
Right.
like, right, I'm the big kid. I My wife tells me all the time I play too much. So
Oh yeah, y'all want to meet, play
no,
too much one and
no,
play too much two.
yeah, but
They're in the same family.
I love it, and he loves it. So like, he fills my cup as much as I'm filling his cup, because like I want to do these things for him, and he's enjoying it. So yeah, that was the bonding time, and yeah, we still to this day. We still skin to skin even now. Being honest, like he's definitely a daddy's boy, and I love it. There's times I'm tired, but I love it, and he just want to be all over me. I'm like, all right, come on, man. So yeah.
So it sounds like what all of you guys are saying is that you absolutely can bond with your child without giving them food. That is the resounding what I've heard, and that's good for fathers who are, new fathers, expecting fathers who may be worried about that, right? Like it's good to hear from you guys to say, no, they're not lying. You could actually bond with them. Here are examples of what you can do. I have two more questions, and then we can wrap up. But a lot of times people just lack knowledge, right? And I found my first bit of breastfeeding knowledge on a Facebook group at like 2 o'clock in the morning when I was struggling with my son. I ended up having mastitis, which is a breast infection that you can get from clogged ducts and that bacteria coming back into your skin. But I only found that out from a group of Black women who I had no idea. They didn't know me, I didn't know them, right? But the group said breastfeeding for Black women, and I said, "Yep, that's me." And I clicked it, and I went in there, and that's where I found my community. And this question is really, I guess, for anybody. Chris already answered a part of it, but did you guys seek any support, or did you have the option to have support? I don't know of many organizations that support, the man. And Devin said something that made me think like, okay, well, maybe we need to write it. He was saying like, there's no book from the dad's point of view on breastfeeding. There's no book that tells you, how you can be helpful and what can also in turn help you. So from the community, from the panel, did you guys seek out any community resources that can support you during the postpartum period? This is for anybody who wants to answer.
I'll say from my perspective, Marjorie and I we've got a couple married friends, and they've got kids as well. So we kind of have the same discussions and things like that. But we would, our the discussion with me and the other husbands would be something like, "Hey man, it was a tough day today." You know what I'm saying? And everybody will chuckle, because they know exactly what the vibe is. They understand what you're saying, and honestly, that was it. It was an underlining understanding of, hey, I know what you're going through. I've been through it once or twice before, and I get it. I do think that if there were, I ain't gonna say up and coming fathers, but younger fathers that they haven't had their child yet, or they're on the beginning stages, right in the postpartum area, having that group of other brothers or other people that they've been through that. They kind of understand that you're, like you said, we can influence our child in other ways other than just holding the bottle for them. Obviously, other people have different situations. I of course agree with that, but just knowing that there's others that have been in your exact same situation, um, and they hear you. They don't. I don't necessarily think that everybody has to have the answer for you, but you need to have people that can just listen to you. Listen to you. Sometimes you got to vent about the wife isn't XYZ doing exactly what you thought the breastfeeding process was going to be, but just having that somebody that you can talk to. It's, I mean, like you said earlier, it's mental therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, having that available. I think for we definitely do need to emphasize the women in the breastfeeding process, but that needs to be something emphasized on the male,
Mm-hmm.
the parenting part.
Agreed, agreed. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Or did you have community that you were able to go to? And while you're thinking about that, Devin, I kind of want to ask you, because I know you said you were a nurse and I know you're in public health. What do you think, like, how can you think health professionals, what do you think health professionals can do to better support dads? I know I'm kind of asking you specifically, but
Yeah, I think to best support, I think one of the things that my wife is really good at getting me to feel, I guess, vulnerable and share rather than keeping it all in. Um, I tend to process things internally and just kind of work through them. So I think,
shout out to Kelsey.
right, I think just like emphasizing, and we took some classes and resources. I just really, and like there may be like a paragraph or like
Mm,
something in passing about being a dad and blah, blah. I think really taking fatherhood and the emotions that a dad could be feeling, like taking that seriously, I think would probably encourage more men to talk about it at a more than just the surface level. Because as Chris was saying, like you might hang out with your boys and just be like, oh yeah, it was tough, it was rough, or just like kind of joking, but like take it a step. It's okay to go a step deeper and just talk about
mm,
how are you really feeling? What is really going on in your head? And I think unfortunately, you have to have those people around you that you're comfortable with doing that. And kind of for me, like my wife has always kind of been my safe space, and she's encouraged me, to just let her know how I'm feeling about being a dad, especially like in the beginning. So
mhm,
um, it's unfortunate like not everyone kind of has that kind of safe space, but I think maybe if you're thinking about having kids or just kind of doing some pre-planning about like it can't hurt to just kind of like connect with like some of your close friends, like can I count on you to be a resource for me if I need to really go a level deeper to really express
mhm.
my feelings and emotions. And I don't know, there's nothing wrong with that. Just like we're all humans, we all have feelings, we all have emotions, we all need to talk about
Right,
it. And just
right.
talking to someone about it and feeling getting a feeling from them that they're empathetic to what you're going through is tremendously tremendously helpful. So I would just, if I could provide some advice for any dad or future dad out there, just try
Oh,
to
hold on.
find
That's my
that
last
one
question,
person.
Devin. Hold on. Don't you take it. That's my last question.
But yeah, try to find that person that you can confide in. There's at least one or two people in your life, and just that you can check in with, and just be
Mhm.
really vulnerable with, just to kind of take it below one step below, just to kind of get it all out there.
And what you said, you just reminded me that the breastfeeding group that I'm a part of, there is like a dad component of it, because some of the dads were like trying to join in, and I'm like, this is not your safe space. We love you, but this is not your safe space. You got to talk about your own stuff. But I forgot about that, and I'm gonna find the name of that and I'll put it up on somewhere online, because you're right. They just need a community. Like who can they talk to? Who can they be vulnerable with? Like Chris said, they'll be like, "Oh, you had a bad day. Yeah, I had a bad day. Okay, so then tomorrow we're gonna. Okay, well, hold on. Let's talk about the bad day. Why was the day bad? How can we make it better? But but what you said, Devin, of being being open to being emotionally available, being open to having a deeper level conversation is the catalyst to being able to find support, because breastfeeding is deeply personal. It is, it is a big deal. So thank you for that input. Brian, Myron, did you guys have any, when you guys, did you go seek out any support? Was there any community that you can turn to give you guys support?
Yeah, so similar to Chris, some of my friends that had kids, in terms of like parenting, been able to kind of vent and just kind of share what I'm feeling, and then it kind of just stays there. Now, depending on like how beat down I felt that day, maybe I was like, all right, man, I just need help me get through this, and then we kind of talk about it for a while, and then we got back to the surface really quick. Like, once I think either I felt like I got enough information, or he felt like he supported me enough. But then in terms of the breastfeeding, not really. I don't know if I even felt comfortable even
Mhm.
trying to vent to like um, one of the brothers in my circle to be like, yo, man, like help me out with this, because I think when I realized that I was struggling trying to figure out how to process it, I probably just was ego got in the way. It's like I'm not sharing that I'm over here
Mm.
frustrated that my wife is nursing all the time and I just want to be able to feed him. Like, so ego probably definitely got in the way with that. I do know that I did share that with my father, and even to this day, like we're just how JR is with me. I'm like that with my father. So like I do remember sharing that, and my dad was like, "Yo, just find something else." It's I guess I am like my father, because when I tell my son, figure it out, he kind of gave me one of those, figure it out. Like, yo, quit crying about this one thing. There's so many other things. And he's like, well, just ask her. And I think that's probably when I started just asking you, like, yo, what else can I do? Because I felt
And
like,
it's like literally everything else.
yeah. And then in terms of parenting, even to this day, if I feel like I get stuck, I just call my father, and he'll give it to me straight, which I appreciate. Like, we've grown from just father son to father son friendship, and I can literally call him and talk to him about anything and be as vulnerable as possible. And he'll be like, "Yo, you either beating yourself down too hard." It's like, "Oh no, yeah, you need to need to get it together. You are tripping." So I appreciate that, the transparency that he provides to me. Um, but knowing that doesn't mean that I go to it all the time, which I think what you were saying, I probably should go to it a lot more frequently before it gets bad. Because like if it gets
Mm,
real heavy, then I'm like, yo, Dad, it's been a rough 2 weeks, and I'm sure he like, well, why you ain't call me on day three? Like, what you was waiting
right.
on? But I think part of it is maybe just ego. It's like, man, I can get through it. I can figure it out. I've taken on tough, challenging things before, and I've persevered. So like, why aren't I able to figure this out? So I think sometimes I can't speak for all brothers, but maybe at least for me, I may wait too long because I feel like, hey, I'll figure it out. It's hard today, but it ain't gonna be hard tomorrow, and then start snowballing it. Now you got this big old boulder, and it's like, oh shoot, I need to call someone, and
Mm,
that's when the phone call usually comes, at least for me. So
mm.
still got work to
So,
do.
so I heard from you is speak up more often, speak up earlier, and find somebody that you can connect with and have those type of conversations with. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yeah, I
Myri.
think it's kind of twofold though, because sometimes I don't want it to feel like it's a burden.
Mm,
Um, right, and I don't know, but at least for me, why I don't vent all the time, because I feel like, dang, my boys would be like, bro, like again today. It's like, yeah, I need another soapbox. Like, give me 10 minutes, right? So I think part of it is like not wanting to burden the brothers, because when you hanging with your boys, like you just want to chill, relax. You ain't trying to think about it. You go there to kind of decompress and get away from that. So that could be it. But I do that a lot more. I got a homeboy Flood that we we have a lot more venting sessions.
Myron, you have any input? Did you have any community that you can reach out to? Did you look for community? Did you even think to look for community to reach out to?
I didn't actually think to look for community. I definitely have a close knit relationship with brothers and my father. They are always individuals who I can lean on for a little bit of masculine engagement. But I'll also say that my wife is my best friend. And I'm sort of becoming more and more introverted as I get older because my wife is my best friend. And I go to her and we talk about the things that we're doing right and wrong. And I like to have those internal discussions. So one thing that I did want to do is if my wife's going to be up, I'm going to be up. I'm going to be by her side. I'm going to be supportive. And that worked for a little bit, but then both of us were tired at the same time. So we learned to pass the baton. All right. So if you're up this time, I'm going to be asleep while you're up. Don't be angry with me, and vice versa. And so you work those things out. So she's my best friend, and I did have opportunities to have needed discussions outside and make sure that I have respectful approach about what my concerns may be. But in essence, it was an opportunity for us to grow deeper.
Mm. Okay, these are so good, so good. Okay, last question for the night, even though I'm going to miss you guys, but last question for the night. I'm going to start with Devin. Devin, since you tried to steal my question earlier, what advice would you give to, I know Chris said it earlier, up and coming fathers. What advice would you give to fathers who are about to have a child or thinking about having a child? Because something you said earlier that I wanted to touch on, where you were like, the planning, the prepping. And one thing I will tell a woman is like a woman will spend time on her baby shower. She will have her baby moon. She will have her hair done, her nails done. She will have the gender reveal, and she will not get lactation counseling. And it's absolutely necessary to get that information ahead of time, because I always tell my clients, you want to study for the test, right? You don't want to ask me after it's here. You want to study for the test. So what advice would you give new fathers, Devin, on this breastfeeding journey, whether it's supporting their partner, but really just how they can get through it?
I would say number one, you need to be your partner's number one advocate. If something doesn't seem right, say something. So I'll lead with that. And then number two, I'd say, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is just don't be afraid to be vulnerable about your emotions and what you're going through, because if you address your mental health needs and get what you need, that's just going to make you a better partner to your wife and a better dad. So I just say, make sure to address those emotions, find your community or someone that you can confide in that, will validate your feelings. That can really go a long way. And I don't discount the emotional aspect of it all.
That little sound bit might go viral, because what you're telling me is you have to be a whole person in order for you to help the people around me. You better say it, Devin. Okay, Chris, what is your advice that you would give to new fathers who are about to embark on their breastfeeding journey with their partners?
Excuse me. For me, one thing that I've said throughout is find your community. Find people that you can talk to. And everything I'm saying is before, during, and after the birth. It's not only at one point in time. Kind of like Brian was saying, don't wait too late to find those resources when you're deep in the hole. Kind of establish it on the front end, so you're mentally prepared. So you're mentally prepared to take care of yourself, but be able to take care of your wife, your spouse, and then be able to provide as much support for your child. Another thing that I would say is, we kind of hinted on it earlier, but through your job, if they give you parental leave, take full advantage of it. The work that you do at your job is, in the grand scheme of things, it's minuscule compared to raising an actual person. And I've learned both my parents have been together. I've learned that a two-parent household it's unbelievable. Marjorie and I, we balance each other. she'll sweep the house and I'll pick it up with a dustpan. You know what I mean? Like we balance off of each other on a lot of things. And with breastfeeding, like I said, I went into it with the complete, I don't understand this. I'm just going to it with a new journey. But she had an idea about it, and she was convicted on I wanted to breastfeed. Had she not been convicted on that, and the third thing is communication. Had she not communicated that to me, maybe the opportunity from somebody at the hospital, hey, you probably need to look at going to formula.
Mhm.
Maybe that would have been something I would considered at the time. But I knew my wife. I knew that she had it set in her mind for 2 years. This is exactly what I'm doing. You can be on board or not, but this is what's happening. And so um, and the last thing I would say is find your resources. Once we left the hospital, that's when all things start to fall apart.
Right.
But you get out of your safety net, and things you didn't think to ask the question before you left. They always ask you, do you have any other questions? And you're like, I don't know.
Like, no, I don't know what I'm doing.
don't know. But you get home and now the air conditioner doesn't work, and and the car won't start, and all types of things happen, and you're like, well, it was working fine before the baby.
Right.
But establish your resources on this particular topic. Marjorie, she'd heard of, but prior to us leaving the hospital, she heard of there was a lactation group available to her. Once she goes home and she can just show up, they'll give you any advice. Maybe things aren't working as much as you thought. And she was adamant that she was going to make it happen until like week 4. And I was like, babe, look, I remember getting this pamphlet. Let's look into this. And she said that was one of the turning points for her too. That it things as far as breastfeeding started to take off a lot better. She knew of colostrum, but like you said earlier, 2 ounces were coming out, and she was like, well, I guess this is all I'm getting.
Right.
And once she went to the group, she was like, well, I know this is all I'm getting. And I know this is all my baby needs. And I know that within whatever time, I'm going to produce some more milk. And my baby may lose a little bit of weight here and there, but this is 100% of all the nutrients that he is supposed to have at this time.
Absolutely.
So just like I said, getting those resources, building that community, taking the time at work, and just communicating.
I love those. I love those. Myron, what would you say your best advice that you would give to families and fathers who are about to, jump on this breastfeeding journey?
Sure, I would say have a clean slate. We have opportunities to know when the child is coming. I cleared my plate. I took my paternity leave. I was in a doctoral program. I let them know that I'm leaving for a semester. At the baby shower, you can make an announcement of what your intentions are to really have a beautiful and pleasant experience. I always say create a joy checklist. That becomes important for you and your spouse. What are the things that will bring you joy during that maternity process and that breastfeeding process? What does it look like for family to visit? Can they be 30 minutes? Should they be an hour? We had opportunities to let people know, come say hello to the baby, drop off the food, and then we would like to have our privacy. So those things could be announced at a baby shower. But those joy checklists for both of you would be very instrumental in how you wish to navigate all the interpersonal relationships and those in your circle.
Man, that is so good. And the idea of setting low-key, like setting your boundaries at the baby shower is genius, because don't come here pretending you didn't hear this before, because I told you 4 weeks ago when you gave me a diaper genie.
It's not a personal list. It's for everyone.
Right. This is for everybody. This is not personal. Exactly. I love that. And the joy checklist. I'm like, I was about to start writing notes from you three already, but I'm gonna capture it later on. That's very like it's kind of like a roadmap to sanity, a roadmap to peace, a roadmap to joy. Brian, may you please close us out with what advice would you give new fathers who are about to embark on a breastfeeding journey with their partner?
Yeah, the first one, and this is consistent, like I think Chris said it prior to, during, and even afterwards, is just open line of communication. Be as transparent with your spouse partner uh, of what that process is going to look like, so that you all are clear and on the same page. And the second one is be a part of the research, right? I
Mhm.
think what most of us have shared tonight is that, our wives were doing all of this research, this, that, and the third. But what I've learned since you've taken on this journey is being a part of research helped me out so much. I'm telling you, you made it so much smoother and easier because you kind of forced me to have to be a part of the research, because it's like, oh, we got to fight. So now I got to know what to say. So yeah, when you talk about colostrum and the nipple shields and lanolin and all that, people are like, what are you like? No, but look, I think my wife about to become one because she coming in with all these books. But it just helped equip me with the tools that I needed to be able to advocate for you when you were present or when you weren't. So I would say be a part of the research, and again, that's prior to, during, and then even afterwards, because there may be other things come up, and you'll be able to help and advocate others for others. And the third one is just be consistent, right? Figure out what your role is on the team, and
Mhm.
then and just fill in that gap, right? So, like you said, we may not be able to breastfeed, but like if you know you are there to clean the bottles or bring the bags while she's pumping, or rubber feed, whatever those things are, just try to identify that one or two tasks that you can become predictable, and I think that helps out the mothers during that process. It's like, look, he ain't do all this, but I know when he hear this pump going, he gonna go get them bags, right?
Right.
Or be like, hey, you need me to put these in the freezer, this, or you need me to throw them out. But like, just figure out those two or three things that that you can commit to, and commit to those, and be the best at that. And I think that probably helps lighten the load for both parties, because you know what you're going to be doing, and they
Mhm.
know, like, all right, he's going to do these three things. At least these three things are going to be done every day. So those are my three tips.
So one thing that somebody said in the group, I was looking in the chat real quick, and they were saying creating a postpartum plan, right? It's kind of like to what Myron was saying, let everybody know what you're planning on doing so everybody's on the same page. So I think that would also be a good tip of information for anybody who's listening, because the advice that you guys gave is like concise. It's not just like you guys are like, well, I think you guys gave very specific words of advice, because that's your personal, like Chris said, this is his personal experience, right? Like you guys are saying, like, this is what you guys did. And I think I know that there is not just brothers but sisters and everybody who was in this conversation, that they got value from the advice that you guys are giving, because sometimes we don't want to give men microphones. Okay, if I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna say the podcast and look at y'all, some of y'all looking crazy, but not in this group, because in this group I see four men who are supportive, four men who are helpful, four men who are open to education, and four men who are open and always ready to go to bat for their partners and their wives. And on behalf of all of your wives, I say thank you, and I'm grateful. Um, and I know that everybody isn't on social media professionally, but if anybody, I know my man is not. If anybody on here is on social media professionally and you would like to give your handle so people can contact you, this is your time to do so. And especially if you have anything coming up, any projects coming up that you would like the community to know.
All right, I'll start then.
You are not. Okay, I'm just joking.
Is that not?
Good.
Well, I was gonna say they can follow us on Marriage is a Muscle podcast, because I heard you mention podcasts, and we have a IG page for that. So if you want to hear more somewhat content similar to this, they can follow in there. And I guess personally, I'm a strength and condition coach, so they can follow me at True Fit Lifestyle Training, and you can be a little more active. like she said, I'm not very active, but we're doing some things on this side, so I do need to advertise that more. But yeah, that's I guess one way to send messages. Like she said, I'm doing a whole lot of
That's,
posting.
I'm very surprised he said something. I'm very surprised because he's usually not on the computer. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
I'm
Anybody else
trying.
want anybody to follow them or have anything going up that you guys want to let the community know? If not, that's totally fine.
Well, I'll
Yeah, I
do some
just
things. You can go ahead, Devin.
I was just gonna say to any men watching, I can be a resource if you need that community. I'm happy to chat, to talk. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think you linked my name to the announcement, so feel free to look me up. Happy to be there if you need someone to talk through your breastfeeding journey with your partner.
I appreciate that, and I know they appreciate that as well. Myron, you were about to say something?
I too welcome anyone who would want to contact me at LinkedIn as well. I know that Sabrina shared that information. Uh, I work at the Beautiful Works, and we're involved in quite a few things in the community. And one of the things that we're really interested in is nutrition. And what better way to talk about nutrition than to talk about breastfeeding, right?
Mm,
And this primary form of nutrition that is so um, just impactful for a child's life, the trajectory of the entirety of their life. So if you're thinking about nutrition and health in any form of fashion, breastfeeding is the start for me of it all. And I'm pleased to be here. And also I want to say that, as men, we have to be very observant. Um, my daughter had a preferred breast, and I brought it to my wife's attention. She likes this one more so than the other one. Maybe we should do that. So if you need more tips on breastfeeding or just any form of masculine support, please hit me up.
thank you, thank you, Chris. Oh, let me just say something. I was gonna tag you on something the other day, and I was like, "Is he on social media?" I have no idea. It was on like Instagram.
For me, I'm hardly ever participating on social media. I can tell you that for sure.
Hmm.
Um, Usually, I guess my involvement would be sometimes participating in some of my my wife's videos on. She's at the STR way. Um, we put a lot of couples videos on there. She's into short-term real estate, so that's her lane. I help wherever I can if she asks for it. You know what I mean? Um, that's just kind of me.
Right, right, right. But I was like, I'm not sure if anybody's gonna say anything, but they might. So yes, the
Yeah.
STR Way, True Fit, but and both of you guys, Devin Adams and Myron Davis, and Marriage is a Muscle. You guys are both on LinkedIn, so you guys can find them there. If you're looking for me, I am Sabrina Trueblood at the Allergen Tree everywhere. So on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and I have a website www.thealadoontree.com. Um, I don't. I don't know if you guys know how much I appreciate you guys spending time with me today, especially on a Monday evening. I really, really appreciate your insights, your vulnerability, your knowledge, and I firmly believe that people cannot seek what they do not know. So I really am very happy that we were able to get insight on fatherhood and feeding. And if there's anybody in the comments that has a question, I didn't see any when I went to go check in, but you guys can just reach out to me and let me know. And I hope that this sparks the action of filling the gap, right? Filling the gap on the end where you guys need to be seen, need to be heard, need to be supported, need to be guided, and need community. So I just want to thank my guests for coming, thank our audience for tuning in, and